Hello everyone, back tuning into the 8th Summer 2018 update. So we're going to be getting more analogues together for this 8th update. We're going to be looking at April pattern matches and also April rainfall. So last week, the 7th update, we closed the door on all of the March information. Now we're moving on to April, because we have all the stats in now for April 2018. Quite a strange month, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. So it's just 3 weeks away now from releasing the GWV Summer 2018 forecast. That will be released on the 27th of May, which is going to be 3 weeks today. So it's getting ever closer. We haven't got many more updates to do, just a few more analogues updates and one more seasonal roundup. Then we're going to put it all together and we'll release that forecast for you. So James, our analogues guru, has been beavering away getting all of the analogues together. I'm going to talk you through the latest round of analogues for the summer of 2018 in a moment. Big thank you as ever to James April for getting all of the analogues together. As I always say, I couldn't do these analogues updates without James's input, because I don't have the time to trawl through all of these charts and get everything together. So a big thank you as always to my collaborator, Mr. James April, my analogues guru. So, we're going to be having a look at some analogues in a second. Just say it's going to be quite a long video, so you can't watch it all in one go. Later on today, around 7, 8 o'clock this evening, it will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it, just going over everything that we discuss in the video. So you're able to come back, watch the video whenever you want, and read that written report as well. Later on today, we'll have the GWV Sunday Roundup, as always, with your eclectic Sunday afternoon mix of this and that. So come back this afternoon for the Sunday Roundup. But now we'll get on with your 8th Summer 2018 Analogues update. We're going to begin by having a look at the reanalysis for April. So this is the month, of course, all of the update that you see in this, all of the charts that you see in this update are going to be based upon April 2018. And as I say, it's quite a strange month, really. It has a very unsettled pattern overall, with a deep trough of low pressure just to our west in the Atlantic. But it also has this very strong sort of ridge feature covering much of Europe, and particularly eastern parts of Europe. And so with the flow and the jet, we do something rather like that. So it's an unsettled month, but it's also quite a warm month as well. So James has been having a look back through the archives and through the reanalysis, and has attempted to come up with some close matches to the 500 millibar reanalysis that we just saw for April 2018. It's a very unique month, April 2018, so there aren't many matches to go at, and none of them we're overly pleased with, but we have come up with a few, or James has come up with a few. So we've got April 1928 as our first pattern match. So this is 2018, April 2018. This is April 1928. You see there is a similarity with that one. We've also got April 1939, which again, there's a similarity, although I'm not sure it's overly close, actually, 1939. Then we've got 1952, and I think out of all of the years that James come up with, 1952 is probably the closest. We've got this ridge covering much of Europe in April 1952, and particularly the centre is across the east of Europe. The trough isn't quite as deep in the Atlantic, but there is still quite a deep trough there. The flow and the jet still probably doing something a bit like that. So I think out of all of the matches that we've tried to look for, April 1952 is probably the closest to 2018. We've got 1989 that we think is quite close, although again not really overly pleased with that one. We've got the trough really over the UK and going into Western Europe, and the ridge is actually more centred up towards Scandinavia. So with that, we're doing something like that. It means that we actually pull now quite cold air. April 1989 was a fairly cold month, so again not overly pleased with that one. And they've also got April 1996. Now this one is appearing a lot in the analogues this year, and again not overly pleased with that one either. So the trough is out in the central part of the Atlantic, really. The ridge is more towards Scandinavia and Greenland, although we are we are doing something like that with flow and with the jet stream. So, I mean, there is a similarity, but not really all that close. I think the closest is actually this one just here, 1952. I think the reanalysis shows that 952 is the closest to April 952 is the closest to April 2018. Just have a quick look at those summers. So this is how the summer of 1928 played out. Very unsettled and cool summer. This one was just a deep trough and a strong Atlantic flow as well. So that was a really unsettled summer in 1928. 1939 looks like that. A summer just before the outbreak of the Second World War, shows that we have above average heights to our north and below average heights to our south. I think it was a fairly cool and unsettled summer overall. Then we've got 1952. This is a cool and unsettled summer, and of course it contains the disaster that occurred with the flooding situation down across the southwest. So you have the blocking feature in the Atlantic and going up towards Greenland. I've done a historic video about the summer of 1952 and the winter of 52-53, which contained just disasters after disasters. And this one was a very cool and unsettled summer overall. And that's probably the closest. April 1952 is probably the closest we can come up with to April 2018 from a reanalysis perspective. Summer 1989 is really good. So if you want a nice summer, then you'll be pleased to see that 1989 is close in terms of the April reanalysis, although it isn't ideal by any means. But the summer of 1989 has this area of above average heights over the UK, and it became a very hot summer, actually, particularly in August. And then 1996, we've talked about this a lot because it is cropping up a lot in the videos just lately. The summer of 1996 looks like that, with the below average heights up around Greenland and Iceland, the above average heights out in the Atlantic, doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. It was a very strange on-off sort of summer, but it was a fairly decent summer, and the only reason we don't remember it, it contained heat waves in all 3 summer months. I've talked about this in the reanalysis videos we've been doing just recently. So June, July and August of 1996 contained pretty hot weather at times, but also with cool interludes. And the reason it's kind of forgotten is just that all of the other summers in the 1990s were so generally hot, so it's overshadowed a little bit by kind of like 1995 and 1997 on either side of it. And also, of course, you got 1994, which was a pretty hot summer. You got 1990, which was a very hot summer eventually as well. And so that's a reason we don't really remember 1996 as a particularly good summer. But it was a decent summer, and it had its moments, most definitely. So if you put those years together, 1928, 1939, 1952, 1989, 1996, this is what you come out for with June. All years combined for June. Remember, it's a small sample because there just aren't all that many matches that we can find to April 2018. But if you put those years together, you come out looking like that, with below average heights over to the north and a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic. So for June, it looks like a fairly unsettled type signal. To be honest. Then you go through to July and you find that the trough centres over Scandinavia more typically. You get a ridge through the central part of the Atlantic, so you kind of like block off the Atlantic. You do something like that with the flow, with the jet stream. That probably turns relatively dry because you're blocking off the Atlantic, but it would be fairly cool on average as well because the wind is coming down from the northwest, of course. And then we go through to August, and we look like that in August. So we find that just an unsettled month, really, with a deep area of below average heights. Let's change the colour. Deep area of below average heights centering over and just to the west of the country, and a ridge close towards Greenland. And do something like that with flow with the jet stream. So the all August combines are generally quite mixed. And then we go through to the all summers combined chart, and we look like that. And again, we get this area of below average heights over and to the north of the country, a ridge through the central part of the Atlantic, and that sends the flow and the jet into that sort of direction. So it looks like a relatively unsettled pattern for the summers of these years. But do bear in mind, we have got some okay summers in there. We've got 1989, which is a very good summer. We've got 1996, which wasn't too bad either. So it is kind of like a little bit of swings and roundabouts. But to be honest, I don't think those analogues are too bad, to be honest. At least we have got 1989 and 1996 of the more modern analogues. But bear in mind, the closest match we can find, which is a bit of a concern, is 1952, April 1952. It's the closest match we can find to April 2018. So swings and roundabouts, but perhaps it's not by any means the worst analogues package that we've seen for these updates so far. So this is again a recap of the April 2018 reanalysis, and it was a very unsettled month with a deep area of below average heights out to the west of us, and then this ridge over across eastern, or centred over these parts of Europe, but actually the ridge was covering many parts of Europe, and so we do something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. It was a warm month, it was a very warm April, and we'll concentrate on temperatures next week, but for this update we're actually going to concentrate on rainfall, on precipitation, because April 2018 for England and Wales does come out in the top 25 wettest Aprils on record, and I'm going to talk you through the 25 wettest Aprils on records and the summers that followed them right now. So it's not a surprise that it was such a wet month, actually, because we do have that deep trough in the Atlantic just to the west of the country. This is from the UK Met Office climate summaries page, actually. So we can see that if I just quickly flip this over, we're going to have to go over to April and then to rainfall and then to April 2010 anomaly. So you'll see that many parts of the country were coming out with a wetter than average month during April 2018. It was a bit drier than average across the far north of Scotland, but most other areas were actually coming out with quite a wet month, and particularly focused across southern and eastern parts of England, so very similar to what happened in March to some degree. So as I say, we do find that April 2018 comes out in the top 25 wettest Aprils on record, and so I'm going to talk you through now those 25 wettest Aprils and the summers that follow them. We begin at number 25 with summer 1992, or April 1992 is sort of 25th wettest April for England and Wales, and this is the summer of 1992 that follows it. Very unsettled, really quite wet summer with the flow and with the jet stream doing something like that, the summer of 1992. This is number 24. It's 1934, and we find that we've got the below average heights to our south across central and southern parts of Europe, and they've got a strong sort of blocking signal up to the north. So it's quite an odd looking pattern for the summer, but we're probably putting the flow and the jet stream through like that. I think it did have some pretty hot weather though in the summer of 1934. 1963 is the 23rd wettest April, and this is just a very unsettled summer that follows it, with a deep area of below average heights over the UK and to our south as well, with quite a strong ridge up there. The jet stream is going down there, so it's a cool summer and it's an unsettled summer, and you kind of like see that it's a follow-on type summer from the winter pattern of 62 and 63 as well. This is the 22nd wettest April, and it's the summer of 1947 that follows it. This is a hot summer, so we've got below average heights in the central part of the Atlantic, but we've got this ridge, this blocking feature that's out to the northeast. The flow and the jet is going rather like that, so again we see that it's a pretty hot looking signal for the summer of 1947. It became particularly hot as we got through into August of 1947. This is, and following on from the severely cold winter, of course, so really bizarre year in 1947 with such a cold winter followed by such a hot summer. Then we go through to number 21 in the wettest Aprils on record. It's 1959, and this is the summer of 1959. It's another decent summer with an area of above average heights over to the east of the country, and so we're doing something like that. That's wrong. We're doing something rather like that with the jet stream. We're on the warm side of the jet, and we're pulling in the wind from an east to southeasterly direction. That was a hot summer, following on from the 21st wettest April in 1959. We've got 1937 next, and this one has this area of above average heights, high pressure extending from the Atlantic through the UK and going up to the northeast Wales. So this is another decent summer. Looks like we have got a mild trend here for some reasonable summers. 1947, 1959, and now after the 20th wettest April we've gone to 1937, which is another fairly reasonable summer. We've got 1922 coming up next, and this is a bad summer. So this is following on from the 19th wettest April on record. It's the summer of 1922 with an area of above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, and then we've got below average heights over just generally over the UK. The jet stream is on a southerly track as well, so that one is a cool and unsettled summer. Actually, the summer of 1922, following on from the 19th wettest April, is one of the worst summers of the 20th century. Summer 1932 comes up next, following the 18th wettest April for England and Wales, and these go back to 1910. By the way, I don't think I mentioned that at the start. So all these wettest months for rainfall go back only to 1910. They don't go back anywhere near as far as they do for the central England temperature. So the 18th wettest April since 1910 is 1932, and it's followed by the summer of 1932, which looks like that, low pressure to our south, a blocking feature in the Atlantic and going up towards Greenland as well. Let's carry on for a few more. So we go through to number 17 in terms of the wettest Aprils on record. It's 1970, and the summer of 1970 is another decent summer. So overall, so far, I don't think this Analogues package is all that bad. I think it does have some summers that aren't too bad. So this one, again, pretty decent summer in 1970 with the jet stream again going up to the north of the country. We go through to 1960. What am I talking about? Go through to number 16 in terms of the wettest Aprils on record for England and Wales back to 1910. And it's 2004. This is the summer of 2004 with a very odd pattern, really. We've got a blocking feature up to the north, but we also have a strong ridge to the southwest. And then we have this below average area of heights in the middle of the Atlantic. And we pull the jet stream up rather like that. So it's a warm summer, but it's also quite an unsettled summer in the summer of in the summer of 2004, the 16th wettest April on record back to 1910. And at that point, I'm just going to pause the video, because halfway through, so I'm going to go and get a drink of water. I've got a little bit of a sore throat, a little bit of tickle throat, so I'm going to go and get a drink of water. I'm going to pause the video, make sure I do pause it, not stop it. I had that happen the other night with the historic video, when I was trying to record it. Instead of pausing, I stopped, and it all turned into a real disaster. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go get myself a little drink of water, and we're going to come back and go through the rest of the it's going to be the top 15 now, wettest Aprils on record, and the summers that followed them. So come back in around 2 seconds, and we'll resume. Okay, and we're back. Just to check to make sure that we're recording. Yes, we are. So we've counted down the top 25 wettest Aprils on record for England and Wales, going back to 1910. We got to number 16, which was 2004, and we looked at the summer of 2004. That followed that 16th wettest April on record for England and Wales back to 1910. We're going to resume now with the top 15, and I'll have a little bit more information to bring you as well. So let's carry on. We've got to number 15, which is 1986. April 1986 comes out as the 15th wettest April on record back to 1910 for England and Wales. And this is how the summer of 1986 looks. It's a very unsettled summer with below average heights centred over the top of the UK and also up around Greenland and Iceland. Interestingly, there's a blocking feature there and also up there, and so the jet stream is going down there. It's a very odd looking pattern for this summer of 1986, but it's a really unsettled summer to say the least. Here's 1989 again. It was April 1989 was the 14th. It was the 14th wettest April on record for England and Wales back to 1910. And this is the summer again of 1989 appearing in our Analogues package. This one has a strong area of above average height centred almost over top of the country. I just talked about that a few moments ago, so we won't dwell on that any further. We've gone through to number 13, and the 13th wettest April since 1910 for England and Wales is April 2018. And this is the summer that followed it, and we haven't got it yet. So all we've got is questions to answer for the summer of 2018. I love it when we throw that one in. So let's move on to the 12th wettest April back to 1910 for England and Wales. It's April 1931. Amazing how many of the 1930s are appearing within these analogues. So this one has below average heights over the UK and also to the north, and then it has a blocking feature around Greenland. So this one looks like a very poor summer in the summer of 1931. We go through to the 11th wettest April, which is April 1961, and this is how the summer of 1961 looks overall. It's a very unsettled summer with below average heights to the north and above average heights down to the south and to the southwest, and we send the flow and the jet stream through rather like that. A cool and unsettled summer in a decade of very poor summers, of course, in the 1960s. We're into the top 10 now. So number 10 in terms of the wettest Aprils for England and Wales back to 1910 is 1993, and this is how the summer of 1993 looks, with below average heights just to the east of the country and a ridge through the Atlantic. This is a cool summer and also a relatively dry summer as well. So it's that strange combination of being both cool but also fairly dry as well in the summer of 1993. Number 9 comes out as 1913. So April 1913 was the 9th wettest April on record back to 1910 for England and Wales. The summer of 1913 looks like that, with a blocking feature out to the northwest of the country and below average heights to the southeast. The flow and the jet going rather like that. We're getting ever closer to number 1. So we go through to number 8, which is 1935. April 1935 was the 8th wettest April on record. The summer of 1935. I say it's amazing how many of the 1930s years in the 1930s decade are appearing within these analogues this week. So unsettled summer, this one, below average heights to the west, and the flow and the jet is going rather like that. Number 7 is 2001. So it's a more modern year. I think this one's been showing up quite a lot within the Analogues packages over the past few weeks. This one, the 7th wettest April since 1910 for England and Wales, is followed by an unsettled summer, but also a relatively warm summer as well, with quite a strong ridge down to the southwest. We bring the flow and the jet through something like that. So it's an unsettled but quite warm summer in 2001. Getting towards the top 5, we're at number 6, and it's 1966. This is a very, very unsettled summer indeed. As I said, the 1960s are a famously bad decade for the summers. This one has a deep area of below average heights over the UK and much of Western Europe, with the blocking feature up to the north, and the flow and the jet are being shoved down to the south like that. It's the World Cup summer, of course, when England England famously won the World Cup at Wembley, but it's a very, very unsettled summer indeed. And we're into the top 5 now. So we find that the 5th wettest April for England and Wales since 1910 is April 1983, and it's followed by the summer of 1983, which is a very, very hot summer indeed. So this one has this strong blocking feature almost over the top of the country, and we're pulling in those hot east to southeasterly winds as well. The hot summer of 1983 follows the 5th wettest April on record. The 4th wettest April on record to 1910 for England and Wales is 1920, and the summer of 1920 looks completely the opposite to the 5th summer. So the 4th summer is 1920, and it's very unsettled indeed, with that deep trough of below average heights over the UK, and we're on the cool side of the jet stream as well. Really unsettled summer in 1920. Top 3 now, so we're up to 1998, and this has been cropping up in the Analogues packages a little bit recently as well. So the 3rd wettest April back to 1910 for England and Wales is April 1998. The summer of 1998 is in some ways a little bit similar to 1993, I suppose, in that it's quite a cool summer, but it is also relatively dry as well. It's not remembered as a desperately wet summer, although the spring was very wet. It did have rain at times, of course, because it's a cool and unsettled summer. But perhaps not a washout of the summer of 1998. Number 2 comes out as 2000. So the 2nd wettest April on record for England and Wales back to 1910 is April 2000. This is how the summer of 2000 looked, with a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic, a blocking feature there, below average heights underneath it through the central Atlantic, and so we do something like that with the flow and with the jet stream on the cool side of the jet, relatively speaking, and unsettled, although it was quite a warm summer, to be honest, for such a pattern as that is, with a block to the northwest and a trough centred over the top of the country. It was a relatively warm summer for what you would look at that and think it's going to be quite a cool summer. But there was a lot of unsettled weather, and it was fairly wet too. And so that takes us up to number 1. So the wettest April on record for England and Wales back to 1910. Can you guess what it is? It is 2012. 2012 is the wettest April on record for England and Wales back to 1910. And this is how the summer looks for 2012, and it's an atrocious summer. We get this strong blocking feature around Greenland, and then we get this deep, deep trough going underneath it. We're sending the flow and the jet stream down there. It's a very cool summer. It's also a very wet summer, and it kind of is like a cousin, I suppose, or maybe a little brother to 2007. They are both very similar type summers in that they are very cool and very unsettled. So if we put all of those together, and we don't do the top 20 actually, we can't do the top 25, but putting the top 20 together, how does it all shape up? So this is how the Junes look for those top 20 wettest Aprils and the summers that follow them. And the Junes of these summers look like that, with above average heights across central parts of Europe, essentially, and we get below average heights up to the northwest. We send the flow and the jet stream through like that. So I suppose for June, actually, it's probably a relatively pleasant signal. We do get a ridge to our southeast. We've got the below average heights out to the northwest. So for June, it's probably a relatively decent signal. July's look like this. So we get the below average heights over and to the east of the country. We get the above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic. And so this looks like a cooler type pattern for July. Not necessarily all that wet, although there would be some very wet and unsettled Julys contained within these analogues. But the main thing, because the centre of the trough is actually ever so slightly to our east, so I assume these are relatively cool months overall, because we're on the cool side of the jet, we have a ridge out to the Atlantic, but because we're blocking off the Atlantic, maybe not overly wet in the Julys of these top 20 wettest Aprils. And then this is how the August look. So we get above average heights out to the north and the northwest of the country. We get below average heights to the south of the country. So again, kind of blocking off the Atlantic. We might get some wet weather threatening from the south, but overall, with that high pressure up there, probably quite cool, yes, but also perhaps not overly wet. So maybe if you get the rain in April, you find that the summers tend to be relatively dry. So I suppose you get the rains in the spring, let's say. The summers perhaps tend to be relatively drier, maybe, but what you have to factor in is that may also tend to be quite cool summers as well. Put it all together, so putting all months together, the Junes, the Julys, the Augusts of the top 20 wettest Aprils, this is how we come out with our reanalysis for all summers combined from the top 20 wettest Aprils. Overall, it looks an unsettled signal with below average heights over the country, but we do block off the Atlantic a little bit. We get a ridge going on up here as well. We are on the cool side of a jet stream, but perhaps not quite as deep with that trough, not quite as severe with the trough as we've seen in some of our analogues packages. So unsettled and cool is the signal, but perhaps not atrociously bad, although there are some atrociously bad summers contained within this. Of course, we know that we've got 2012 in there, for example, and we've got 1920 as well. But bear in mind, we also have 1983, we have 1947, so we have got some decent summers in the analogues package also. And then just narrowing this down a little bit more, James has had a go at narrowing it down and just picking out the summers that follow Aprils that are closer to the total rainfall that we had in April 2018. So we're looking at 68 to 94 millimetres, that sort of range of wet Aprils. And then this is how, if you narrow it down a little bit more, this is how the Junes look of those years. And I can tell you the years that we've got here. We've got 2001, we've got 1925, we've got 1913, 1993, 1961, 1931, 1989, 1986, 2004, 1917, 1932, 1922, 1937, 1959, 1947, 1963, 1934, 1992, and 2005. So just narrowing the range down a little bit, taking out some of the more extreme ones, because we know that April 2018 came out as number 13, so it's kind of like slap bang in the middle of the top 25 wettest Aprils. So take out the extremes on either side perhaps, and particularly at the wetter range of things, and narrow it down just a little bit more, and this is what you come out with in terms of the pattern for June, reanalysis for June. You find that it's a slightly more settled signal, actually, interestingly. So the ridge is more centred over the UK and also going up towards the northeast as well, with the below average heights down to the south and to the southwest too. And so the air typically is pulling up from the southeast. So actually these, when we narrow it down a little bit, the Junes look rather better, rather drier, and rather warmer as well. But then the Julys look worse, because it looks like the trough is actually, with the Julys, more centred over the top of the country. You remember, with just the top 20 Julys, what we found is that the trough was centred just a little bit to our east, which perhaps allowed for some slightly drier weather, albeit quite cool. But this time we find the trough more or less centred over the top of the country, and the flow of the jet is going something like that. So we're on the cool side of the jet. The Augusts look like that, not as bad as the Julys. We find that the trough is this time centred more towards our south and southwest. We have got a bit of a blocking feature up to the northeast as well, and so the flow and the jet is probably pulling up like that, which does allow potentially for some warm weather in the August. And then if we put it all together, all months and years combined for the summers of this much narrower range of 68 to 94 millimeters during April, this is what we find, and we find that it is an unsettled looking signal still for the summers, with the trough going down there and the jet stream too. Bear in mind, again, there are several summers that are really quite good within these analogues. We've got 1989, and then if we come further down, we see that we've got 1959. Let's change, I'm not sure what went wrong there. We've got 1959 and 1947 showing up as well. So we have got some decent summers within these analogues to work with, albeit they're in the minority, but you probably expect them to be in the minority because a hot summer is always an unusual event for the UK. So the fact we have got a few showing up within these analogues packages means that I don't think this analogues package is as bad as some of the analogues that we've looked at through the course of this season. We have looked at some really, really bad analogues over the season of these updates. I won't go over them now, but if you've been following the story, you'll know we have looked at some very, very bad analogues indeed this season. I don't think this package is as bad as some that we've looked at, albeit pushing everything to the side and just narrowing down to the central point. It still looks like we have that idea within this analog. It's very interesting because it's been playing out all the way through this year's updates. Still looks like we have that idea that June is favoured to be the driest and the warmest month and most anticyclonic month, and then July and August potentially get a deterioration, albeit the deterioration that we're seeing within this analogues package isn't as bad as some of the deteriorations that we've seen in earlier analogues packages. But overall, it's still kind of like that same idea. Right, so that is your 8th summer 2018 analogues update. We're going to do the 9th next week, and the 9th update will be focusing on the temperature during April. So we're going to be having a look at the CETs and no doubt having a look at warm Aprils and seeing what the summers were like that followed those warm Aprils. We're counting down the clock ever more. Now we're getting closer and closer to having to release the forecast for the summer of 2018. We'll be releasing it on the 27th of May. So we're getting ever closer to it. And we'll see what next week's 9th update has to say next week. So come back, same time, same place for the 9th summer 2018 update. That's it for the 8th update. And just say that later on today we'll have GWV Study Roundup. This video will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it later on today, usually getting up at around 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. So come and have a look at the written report and come back and watch the video when you want. And later on, I've got the GWV Study Roundup, of course. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.